Hey guys, my name is Immaculate Christie, and I'm going to be presenting on the Ebola viral fever. So, a little bit about Ebola as a whole. It's a filovirus, and that's the family of viruses that it belongs to, which causes hemorrhagic fever. And so, commonly, you'll see patients with fever and fatigue, but they're also going to be coughing up blood and diarrhea and a lot of vomiting. This is primarily spread through contact with infected bodily fluids, and also unsterile healthcare environments have a big role in propagating the spread of Ebola because, due to poor healthcare infrastructure, there was repeated needle usage or reusage of needles. And so patients would get the same needles, but they would get, it would not be properly sterilized in between. Ebola also has a 50% mortality rate, and so it's pretty up there, it's pretty dangerous, and there's no cure for it. But there is vaccine research going on today. Treatment consists of mainly supportive intensive therapy, a lot of fluid therapy just because patients are constantly losing fluid, so we want to be able to counteract that. So when was it first seen and what was made of it? So it was first seen in 1976. A headmaster of a school had gone out in a 2-week excursion and he purchased antelope and monkey meat. He's known as patient zero because people think that the virus was first in the monkey meat, and since he ate it, he had contracted it. When he presented with the symptoms, he was treated for malaria, but he died a few days later. And so local authorities knew that this was a microorganism, but they just did not know what it was. And so they asked for international help to identify this new bug. The mystery bug of Yambuku. So specimens were further processed by called serotyping, and so this is ranking these viruses based on certain cells that they express on their cells, or certain proteins that they express on their cell surface. My bad. And these are proteins that they're called antigens. And now so they were serotyped against yellow fever and typhoid. Yellow fever was ruled out. Typhoid was a maybe, but it was not. But it was later ruled out. And a new isolation suggested that it was actually really similar to the serotype of a Marburg virus. And Marburg virus also causes hemorrhagic fever, but other tests confirmed that this was a completely different virus. And so here on the left here, this is actually the first portrait of Ebola ever taken, and this is the Marburg virus right next to it, so it's similar in structure and whatnot. But yeah, this is the first picture ever taken at the CDC on 1976. Ebola definitely had a huge rural, societal, and individual impact. There was a general distrust in healthcare infrastructure just because people would see that patients would go to the hospital and they weren't necessarily getting better. In fact, a lot more people were dying. Carers that cared for patients felt the significant fear and helplessness because they knew that with whatever they were doing just wasn't necessarily having a good impact on the patient. And they also knew that they were putting themselves at risk for getting infected and dying themselves. Carers also often experienced isolation from their own families and communities because they didn't want them bringing the bug home. There was also a bit of conspiracy surrounding Ebola, such as that this was intentionally administered by health workers, or that this was a plot by foreign governments as a way to get rid of these people. So while Ebola took the lives of many people, there were some survivors, and their life wasn't necessarily the easiest either. They were often threatened, attacked, evicted, or left behind because there was just this cultural stigma that they were probably bewitched, or that this was a punishment from God, and that they were deserving of their affliction, and we just did not want them around. I think it's really important to look at Ebola at the context of where it was primarily affecting. And so in these areas, traditional medical practice is still very prevalent even till today. So traditional healers are often more highly regarded than those who promote unfamiliar forms of healthcare. So they're more highly regarded than, medical doctors today. And so there were actually several studies done to see how did how did traditional medicine propagate the spread of Ebola, and it revealed that a lot of traditional spiritual healers falsely claimed to have the capability to cure Ebola, and they would do things such as making incisions into people's bodies and rubbing herbal medicine in, and so coming in contact with infected tissue themselves, they got infected. Another important thing to look at are burial practices. It's really prevalent in these communities as well, and so it's common for people to lay over the corpse of infected individuals, and in the hope of receiving spiritual gifts from them. And studies showed that a lot of people that had passed away from Ebola had been known to take part of these burial rituals, and so it was a lot of individuals dying and then their families taking a part of the burial practices, and then the families get infected, and it was just this chain reaction. So we definitely have some important questions that we are left to answer, because primarily, we have a majority consensus of what is Ebola, like what is it caused by, how do we treat it, and what safe hygienic practices that we need to take in, or what safe hygienic practices that we need to take part of. But we have to be mindful that Ebola is also prevalent in communities that have these different worldviews and different practices. So we need to ask questions like, how do we keep burial traditions within culture but minimize the chances of contracting the disease? Or should we put someone in place to monitor and ensure that people are abiding some certain guidelines, or they're discontinuing with the practices as a whole? And so we definitely need to bridge the communities and bridge the viewpoints of this just to keep everyone safe. And in answering these questions, I hope that's a little bit more easy to do that. Here are my references, and yeah, thanks for watching.